So we've got JDHQ in the workshop space in non-workshop mode at the moment. And I'm going to use up the watercolour that we didn't use in the last workshop. I need some laces. Oh, this is with a glue gun. I'm going to take that too. I really don't like wasting paint, especially this gorgeous colour library paint. So this is leftovers from my last retreat, and rather than doing anything else, throwing away or wasting this paint, I'm going to just add lots of water to it and let it dribble on my page. Now, I thought I'd clean all of the palettes off. I hadn't even touched the sides, but I managed to clean off at least one palette. And then got completely distracted with the gorgeousness of all of this mess. So I've really only got three colours here: the cobalt turquoise, which is called 20,000 Leagues, the Pride and Prejudice colour, which is our opera rose, and a little bit of Huckleberry Fin, which is a beautiful warm yellow. And of course, from these colours, you get gorgeous secondary colours. So mixes of purples and oranges, little tiny bit of green, as you can see. And then when everything dries, I've got granulation, spots, blops, and just a glorious, pretty mess that I can then create something really fun on. Isn't my little table set up nice? So I wanted to use the Gods and Monsters inks, and this is the Roman edition. We also had the ancient Greek edition. And the fabulous thing about inks, all inks, is how versatile they are. These inks are extra special. They do have some special properties. But first of all, inks are just so fantastic because you can add them, like I am here, to a mister so that you can use them as a spray. I'm also going to add in a little bit of pebble pigment. These are sculptural clusters of pigment. This is the Birth of Venus set, and I'm just popping one of those little shell-shaped clusters of gorgeous shimmerness into that ink. Now you could pop that in the whole bottle and it will dissolve and make the whole bottle of your ink beautiful and shiny in whatever colour you've added it into. I can also add the ink and one of the pebble pigments into a water brush, which is basically an empty paintbrush. You add your ink into it and it will just come out. If you've ever had my mermaid markers, that's what these are. And rather than create more mermaid markers, what I've gone ahead and done is create the empty water brushes and all of these amazing inks. I have hundreds of inks that I've created on my website, and all of them have different properties, different colors. They all do different things. And because these inks are fountain pen friendly, I can add them into the Incredible pens or any of our fountain pens. The set also comes with stickers so that you can label any sprays or water brushes or pens that you create with these inks so that you can remember what is inside them. We also have the Dr. Ink pens that you unscrew like this. That's a blank empty pen waiting for you to create whatever ink you would like with it. I've just popped it into a colour called Centaur, which is a really deep chocolatey brown. And when you put it on different papers, you get different kinds of shading and gradiating effects, like you do with all of our Gods and Monsters inks. Once the ink has drawn up, you just clean off that little nib, pop it back into the Dr. Ink or drink pen, close it up, and it is ready to start sketching with. But before we start sketching, I want to add the inks in a different way onto my now dry watercolour background. So I'm going to put down some of our laces, and we always have different laces in the online store. They're from my personal collection because I am a mad lace collector, not because I like wearing it, because I like to spray inks through it. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm spraying Pegasus through it. And I'm getting this lovely, delicate effect, especially when I use these lighter colours. It's got the impact, but I'm just adding a little bit of visual texture so that when I draw and paint on top of it, I've got interest in the background, but it's not going to be overwhelming. I'm also using Venus, the colour Venus, with some of the pebble pigment inside so that it's got shimmer. So I'll end up with a gorgeous golden shimmer shining through in a delicate pattern. Now I've got some Pegasus loaded into my water brush, and I've also added one of the pebble pigments into this as well. So that as I create, I'm going to have mica, the gorgeous shimmer that is inside that ink now. It will float along on the ink, and then as the ink absorbs and sets into the paper, it will play around and float around. You won't know what the exact effect is going to be until you let things dry. But they do look quite pretty when they're wet as well. Now, I'm an intuitive artist, which means I follow my intuition, and also an artist who likes to have a lot of fun when they create. I find art supplies an absolute joy, and I love it when they do what I tell them to do, and I equally love it when they go off and do their own thing and we discover new techniques together, and then I like to show them to you. So what I'm doing here is just letting a Venus, an Aphrodite, a goddess of some description, float onto the paper. And the reason I know she's a goddess is because I'm playing with the Gods and Monsters inks, and of course they conjure goddesses, occasionally monsters as well, okay. And also I've got the added beauty of the Birth of Venus pebble pigments in there. So the likelihood of it, this being a goddess, is very, very high. And I'm also now drawing into that wet ink. So the ink that's on there is Pegasus, which is this beautiful bruisey purple. And now I'm drawing into it with Centaur, with that Dr. Ink pen you saw me fill before. Now these are water-soluble inks. So if I add water to them, they're going to blur, they're going to move a little bit depending on what I'm creating on and how much ink I've got, the angle of the moon, the trajectory of the sun, the mysteries of life. This is the beautiful thing about inks, watercolours, art supplies that collaborate with you, that work with you. They don't really like being bossed around so much. These types of art supplies are lovely to go on a walk with because they notice things of their own accord, and they have slightly different interests to you perhaps. So they're always a little bit surprising. This is the way that I look at art supplies. Then there are the types of art supplies who you are the boss of, that like to be led around and told what to do, like acrylics. I've got another kind of paint called lay cake. It loves to be told what to do. It can hold a surprise or two, but it prefers guidance. But you can combine one of these more laissez-faire art supplies like Gods and Monsters ink with a very precise tool like the Dr. Ink pen, and this way you can get to boss around a goddess, even a monster. And don't forget to move around or move your artwork around and look at it from different angles, especially if you're using art supplies that have some shimmer in them, because it's not until you move them that you can really see the full magic. Give yourself a treat. Now here I am using one of my favorite little things. It's called a candy dipper, and it's a gel based ink that is inside it, and it's like having a tiny paintbrush. Well, it actually includes a paintbrush. There's 12 different colors. This is the white, and it creates tiny fine lines of paint. So this dries waterproof, and I love putting in little details with it because I get a painterly brushstroke rather than when I use one of my paint pens. It's just a cleaner, neater line. Sometimes I want it to be a little bit messier because the rest of this page is messy. I'm also going over and adding more and more detail, playing around with the highlights and those details, the beginnings of the shadows. Now I think my goddess is starting to take form, but I need to make her stand out from this rather busy background. So I'm using marzipan twists and just massaging her face. So marzipan twists are a water-soluble crayon. They are super smudgy and are gel-based as well, like the candy dippers. It's a new type of medium. So you can add water to smudge them, you can smudge them with your fingers, but it's adding a little bit of chalkiness without adding too much opacity at this point. So I'm just creating some room. And now I'm using a little bit of that Venus ink that I popped in my mister bottle, just lifting it out with my paintbrush, and it's got that gorgeous pebble pigment in it. So as it dries, it's going to have that beautiful shimmer. And also I'm adding some life into her face, and that's going to mix a little bit with whatever else that I've got on the paper, the watercolor, the marzipan twist, maybe even the centaur ink. I think her lashes need a little bit more definition, but I don't want to go in with jet black quite yet because it's just hard to walk things back from there. And that's going to create quite a big contrast because everything else is so pastel-y and colourful. So I'm going to start off with Cyclops. This is a green black, or you can think of it as a black green, one or the other. But it adds definition, it adds depth without going right into my darkest of darks. Now, you might not like working on such a busy background for the face, and I absolutely get that. It's challenging, but for whatever reason, this in particular is something that I'm very, very drawn to, literally, because I did just draw this, but I'm so drawn to creating on wild backgrounds, and then setting that challenge of making the face or the figure stand out from that wild background. I wonder if I went and studied psychology, what that would say about me. Don't tell me, I don't need to know. Here's my little candy dipper out again, and I'm just reinstating some of these highlights. And I suppose that's something that's fun to point out is I will add and add and add highlights and then depth and highlights, then depth, and they'll be covering each other up. And you just end up creating more and more dimension every time you do it. So I try and divorce myself away from doing things once and doing them perfectly. That just doesn't happen. I like to add a little bit, see how that looks, add a little bit more, see how that looks, go on to a different part of the page and play around with that, come back to whatever it was. As soon as I feel resistance or think, oh, this isn't, what's going on here, I move on to a different part of the face so that eventually I'll work around back to whatever was making me think, oh, wait a minute, wobble, wobble, we're having a wobble. I'll come back with fresh eyes, and I hopefully will either be able to see what it is that was making me feel that wobble, or and make changes, or I will think, okay, that wasn't a wobble. That was personality. That was the charisma of the painting coming through. Oh, I'm waxing lyrical today. I suppose I should mention what it is that I'm using from time to time. You've seen me using the Gods and Monsters inks inside a fountain pen, the fountain pen in fact. And now I'm using Tippy Toes, which is a metallic brush-tipped paint marker to create some galactic or Olympian glimmer, and I very often use metallics to help create a border. Again, I'm creating separation from a crazy background, but not adding jet black quite yet. I want to save my blacks for special. I tend to think of black, jet black, as a power colour. So when I'm ready for a power move, that's when I'll break out my carbon black. And I know that this colour that I'm adding doesn't look like it, but this is Hydra, which is from the Gods and Monsters inks. It's quite a scary monster. It's a beautiful ink though. On here it's looking like a muted, lively grey, let's call it. It's actually a beautiful muted turquoise. Absolutely divine, because the Hydra was a waterborne creature. It was like a snake with multiple heads. Every time he cut the head off, it would grow more. For some reason, Hercules decided that he would murder it for no really good reason, just because he needed to prove how strong he was. Like many of the mythical creatures of ancient Greece, they came a cropper to, some half god, half man, out to prove themselves. But we can celebrate the life of Hydra in a gorgeous ink. Now, this is a little bit later. Everything is bone dry, and I'm going to add some pebble pigments. What? Yes, these are pebble pigments. In each package of pebble pigments, you don't only just have a jar full of little tiny sculptural watercolours, you've also got a little set of tiny shells, actual shells, and you can use them to create a beautiful watercolour palette. And I've put the pebble pigments in there and I've let them melt with gum arabic, our kind of binder. If you wanted to check these out, you can see them on my website or watch the videos about them. And I'm adding some of this gorgeous gold, which is from one of the other sets. I think it's from Heavy Petal. And adding a little bit of a full-blown glam gold to her eyes. Now I'm going to take one of the Take a Dip glass paint pens. Yes, that is a mermaid tail on the end of the pen. So it's actually handmade from glass, and then dipping it right into an ink called Pluto. Pluto was the king of the underworld. He was one of 3 brothers. Poseidon had the oceans, Zeus had the skies, and Mount Olympus as the king of the ancient Greek gods. And Pluto was, I'm mixing up my Romans and Greeks here, but anyway, Pluto is also Hades, and he was the king god of the underworld. So of course I'm celebrating him with this really dark brown ink, and it has a lot of life in it because life comes from the earth, comes from underground. Also, Pluto was regarded as the richest of the gods. Because that's where the diamonds, the golds, the jewels, the gems, where do they all come from? Out of the ground. So he was, if people in ancient Rome wanted to wish for greater worldly goods, they would make an offering to Pluto. Now I'm moving past adding depth with everything other than black. We're moving into the jet black of it all. I'm using a pen called the LTQ, licensed to quill, and it's got a feather shape. Yes, it's flamboyant and fancy. What is inside is even more fancy. It is a waterproof jet black ink, but if I brush over it before it dries, I can get it to soften a little bit. Be careful though, it is jet black. It's an amazing, gorgeous ink. I'm adding more shadows with some of my shadowy realm colours. And having a little bit of trouble with that eye. I filmed this part of the video in a live stream, which you're very welcome to look under the lives tab on my channel. and you can see all of the live streams there. Don't forget, you can always put things in fast forward if you don't want to sit there for the whole thing, but art takes the time that it takes. So for this video, I've been able to fast forward bits and chop bits out, and I don't have to wait for things to dry through the magic of editing. But in a live stream, just life happens, so it's always a bit of fun. Please come and join us. I do live streams every week. Okay, so I'm now adding watercolour. Because everything is dry underneath, this is going to stay fairly put. And although it's creating depth, I've also added blues and purples, even a touch of turquoise in there, so that it has depth, but it has a lively depth. I'm trying to make the head look like it is turning, and we've got a little bit of dimension happening. I'm also using a white paint pen to pick out some detail. And let's just tip the page up, because when I'm working under bright lights, it does significantly change the way colours and lines appear. Anything with shimmer or shine in it, I think you need to move the page around every so often just so you can really see what's going on. I'm also incorporating coloured pencils into this. I've got an amazing set of coloured pencils in the collection called the skincare pencils. They've got a thicker core, slightly creamier, and fantastic colours for drawing faces. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, you might like to join me in the Gods and Monsters online workshop. It's perfect preparation for the next workshop, which is coming up very soon, and I am hugely excited about it. Everything that I've shown you, you can find at janedavenport.com, and I'm just really grateful that we got to spend some time together.